Starting at my placement, my teaching and learning philosophy has been challenged and changed by my experiences. Maynard and Forlong suggested there were 5 typical stages of initial school experience: early idealism, personal survival, recognising difficulties, hitting the plateau, and moving on. My expectations and theoretical preconceptions were quickly altered, and I had to get used to reflecting on my approach and understanding of what it was to teach and learn. As Smith 1993 stated, psychologists and educators don't agree on or even claim to be able to say what learning is. After my experience at placement, I have concluded that for my specialism of English, social constructivist theories seem more applicable. Vygotsky's approach to social constructivism draws attention to the key role of experienced participants in inducting less competent learners and in mediating, scaffolding, and extending their understanding. While in this theory the learner is still active, much of their initial learning is supported by teacher or peers, and group work is essential. In English, mastery of the subject is accomplished when students understand potential implications of the lexical choices used by ourselves and others, which then can be applied to all uses of language in everyday and professional lives. As such, the social aspect to learning is important for students so they can discuss their own experiences with different contexts, and in groups they can share understanding of some more complex theories. Once I developed a belief in the relevance of this learning theory, my teaching and learning philosophy became shaped by the implications of a learning style, working on Professional Standard 9 by applying this theory and research to my own learning methods. As such, I focused on the effect of social interaction within the classroom. As theorist Jacques noted, without a climate of trust and cooperation, students will not feel like taking the risk of making mistakes and learning from them. This is particularly important for English literature, as the subject often involves personal opinions shaping the reading, so it's essential for students to feel safe putting forward an opinion that may differ to those of others. One of my responsibilities is to ensure that the social environment is safe and suitable for all learners, as seen in Professional Standard 14. This involves differentiation to ensure fast-working students are stretched and challenged, which I accomplish through setting extension tasks, but also recognising barriers to learning other students may face. I use ProMonitor to check on individual learning needs, such as SEND and mental health needs, which has then allowed me to adapt lessons to be inclusive for everyone. Statistics have shown that students with learning difficulties appear to have failed to achieve academically, perhaps because they felt excluded and viewed their exclusion as a failure on their part to be accepted as a member of a learning group. As such, I have taken care to ensure that group work is inclusive of all students. This has at times been challenging, as I have one student with ASD who is extremely uncomfortable with direct social interaction with peers. I overcame this somewhat by considering how group work can be contributed to in a written or online way so he can participate without being discomforted. My consideration of SEND needs within a group environment allows me to reach Standard 5. Another barrier to learning I have recognised, particularly in my GCSE resit classes, is the impact of low self-esteem upon learning. Many theorists have considered this, and Roberts surmised that children only learn effectively if their self-esteem is positive. I've often found students who will preface reading out their work by claiming it's not good, and they have a preset idea their attempts are bad before they even submit it. This negative view of themselves may be as a result of painful experiences in the past, or a defensive posture to protect them from potential failure. While the environment I want to create in these classes is that of fun, engagement, and passion about the subject, these students are often disengaged, disaffected, and dislike English due to prior experiences. Their previous failure has encouraged a mindset in which they believe that their personal capability is fixed and that they either can or cannot succeed at new challenges they meet in a school. To try to overcome these barriers, I'm finding it particularly important to raise the self-esteem of those students by helping them set achievable targets for progression, thus addressing Standard 16, which considers working to get past learning barriers. This is effective as it allows students to gain confidence in their abilities. In doing so, I'm creating a climate where students are challenged to improve, but the targets are within their capability. This is an essential start to building confidence and learning ability, as pupil dignity can be protected and individual effort and engagement rewarded, and also considers Standard 13 as students are motivated to progress by their achievements, is that many students in one language group are shy and reserved, which can make group discussions and volunteer questioning difficult. To overcome this, I consider the importance of rapport with my learners, to encourage them to respond and participate in a positive environment. If pupils feel this open, positive regard and understand it has to be framed by requirements of school, then the foundations for good relationships for learning exist. One of my responsibilities as teacher is to get to know the students as individuals and be concerned with the student as a whole person, as a potentially valuable member of a professional group rather than just part of a class. It's also outlined as Professional Standard 6. I have achieved this by always approaching my students with a positive manner, taking care to quickly learn their names and encourage small talk before and after lessons. Students responded very positively to this, and during my first observation it was noted as a strength of mine. It's important to have this rapport between students as well. While considering how to apply social theories to my teaching, I came across Lowe's theory of communities of practice, in which knowledge and skills are seen as not belonging solely to an individual, but things that are to be shared and developed collectively within a context. Lowe suggests in order to fully learn, there's a necessary sharing and application of ideas held by a group, as well as the individual's understanding, and that knowing is interminably inventive and entwined with doing. One of the ways I'm applying this to my teaching is using a blog for my creative writing group, which will then act as an online community. To recreate the sense of community online, it's easier if they're committed to a real community or shared social purpose within the physical classroom, which can then be transferred. I'm hoping that by sharing and feeding back on each other's work, they will become more confident in their writing abilities and gain a group rapport that allows them to support each other in their learning, and by doing so, I meet Standard 15. Using technology to further their social learning is something I want to explore further, as technology is now so pervasive and embedded within the cultures of children and young people that it provides a very strong illustration of the knowledge and experiential resources that exist beyond formal educational settings. So far, however, I've faced technological issues with getting the group signed up to the blog, so it hasn't been entirely effective, but this is something I'm going to work on and remedy so we can have a fully functioning online community. Even then, however, I'll have to consider that any work will only be completed at the student's wish, so how much they learn will depend on whether children are passive or active in their stance. Learners' needs, I've used a variety of different activities across my classes to help them with revision and essay techniques, considering how they may engage differently to learning styles. In language, I made a revision sheet that they filled in as part of a jigsaw activity after considering research that suggested peer teaching exercises can be particularly useful for sharing experiences and developing understanding. I made starter sheets and PowerPoints for a literature class where students were tasked with independently finding quotes from a play, and for a GCSE class, I created a mock exam paper we could work through in small groups. By being creative in choosing and creating these activities, I have reached professional standard 4. I tend to try and include group work at some point in every session after considering the TLRP research findings that pupils who worked effectively in groups often did measurably better in individual exams. By incorporating activities with a range of individual, group and whole class work, I aim to create a range of learning environments and methods for students to engage with, which allow me to meet Standard 1. It's a necessary role as teacher to adapt and modify teaching styles to support, nurture and encourage the individual, to promote active learning to take place. Creating a fun, engaging but challenging atmosphere is what I'm aiming to achieve in my lessons, which is a challenge sometimes with disaffected learners in my GCSE classes. As a trainee teacher, experimentation and self-reflection on new activities is vital. To grow and become more effective, I have learned that the teacher must know when learning is correct or incorrect, when to experiment and learn from the experience, learn to monitor, seek and give feedback, and know to try alternative learning strategies when others do not work. Some tasks I used have not always worked, and on reflection I've noticed how they can be adapted. Some lessons that work well with one group have then not been successful with another, due to the different styles and levels of engagement of the learners. One way of reflecting is by working with colleagues to hear what suggestions they may have through their observations. My mentor and I have weekly meetings to discuss what worked, what needs adapting, and to set targets for myself on how best to reach my potential. I'm working with another trainee to plan collaborative lessons so we can see how it is to co-teach. By working together, I've met Standard 10 as I was starting to consider the effectiveness of my teaching methods with others, and Standard 20 by developing the organisation with our collaborative experimental approach. This reflection and training has also taken place during the CPD day I took part in, allowing me to incorporate Standard 19 through updating my teacher training with the placement. I also have an upcoming Prevent workshop in the new year. It's important to attend training for Prevent, Safeguarding and CPD, as these are all vital responsibilities as teachers to develop my skills and understanding, and by recognising and developing these I have met Professional Standard 12. By working independently and with colleagues at my placement to improve my educational practice, I can keep growing and bettering myself as a teacher.